I assume you heard the toilet flush. Sorry. Go on.
Welcome everybody to the stream. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody is having a good day or a good evening where you're at. Greetings again to all of you. The pleasure to be with you all. As all of you know, I just got back from an excellent trip to China. It was fantastic. It was with Jackson and Dennis. Was really great. We got to meet some amazing people, including Huang Dafa, who was a hero and was awarded the highest medal of the Communist Party of China. Got to travel Shanghai and throughout a lot of Guizhou and a lot of the areas that were the start of the Long March, which of course saved the People's Republic of China's forces at the time. It was not the People's Republic yet. It was still under occupation and under the nationalists, but the Red Army would eventually become the People's Liberation Army and take full power after 1949. So that was where the history started. There's a lot of content's coming out. A lot of great things are coming out. So look forward to showing you all what we did in China and to continuing to build a great network and a great opportunity for us to present all the latest that's going on. Now, tonight, I am joined by an amazing, amazing comrade, brother. I had the chance, some of you saw already on X, had the chance to have a great lunch with him today. We had Middle Eastern food, so it was perfect, very timely, of course, as everyone knows. And I'm gonna bring him up in 1 second, but first, we gotta go back in time. We gotta look at what brought him into the spotlight, what catapulted him to the spotlight. So let's take a look. Let's take a look real quick, and all of you will be able to enjoy this very, very famous video. Let's throw it up here. Let's see if we can. All right, here we go.
British passport. There's new anti-terror legislation in the United Kingdom that says they can withdraw and revoke citizenship to anyone that participates in anything they deem as a threat to their country. So consider my passport revoked, consider it rescinded, and consider it that I do not want it anymore. You can kiss my ass. So, fuck you, Great Britain. Slava Russia.
So there we are, the one and only, Aiden Minnis. Welcome here. Let's see if you can unmute your.
Am I muted?
You're
okay.
You're good.
Nice.
You're good. Welcome to our hero, our beloved Irishman, serving in the SVO. For those who don't know, by the way, not only is he the recipient of the campaign medal for the special military operation, Aiden has been awarded the Medal of Suvorov for his courage and bravery in combat. So our salute to you, brother. Our salute to you, dear comrade. Welcome to the stream.
I'm happy to be here, Chris, and thank you for your hospitality earlier. That was a wonderful meal that we ate. So I'm very happy to be working together and hopefully on towards the liberation of the rest of the Novorossiya regions and then beyond wherever we need to be.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. So the first thing I'm going to ask you, because many of our viewers don't know you, just give a little background about yourself. Give a little background of what led you to the point of eventually coming to Russia and to participating in the SMO.
Of course, I come from an Irish family. I myself was born in the United Kingdom, but of course, coming from an Irish family, I don't consider myself British. I have a political ideology of Irish republicanism, and we all know what that entails. And I've always been aware of the politics and the geopolitics and the empire building that the West do, specifically the United Kingdom. And of course, when this coup happened in 2014, I was aware of what it really was and who was involved, who armed it, who financed it, who led the intelligence in order to carry it out. And then, of course, what came after the 2014 coup was a systematic murder of ethnic Russians, whether that be the Odessa trade union building fire, the Kharkov bus bombings, the dropping of phosphorus on Donetsk city, the bombardment from land, sea, and air of the cities in the Donbass, and then of course you've got the torture videos, people being tied to crosses and setting on fire, and women being attacked in a sexual way, people being strapped to lampposts and beaten for speaking Russian, and I'd had enough of it at that point, knowing what I know. What it was. It wasn't a revolution. It was a coup by Bandera forces with the complicity of the Western states, especially Great Britain. So, I'm of the opinion and of the ideology that if not me, then who? So that's what led me to decide that I'm going to come over and fight this injustice and this terrorism effectively.
Amazing. What an amazing journey. And tell us about, you've been involved for how long? What have your experiences been like, briefly? And sort of, how do you feel now wearing the uniform of the Russian army and participating in what really is a war, not only against Ukrainian fascist regime, against NATO, really?
Yeah, absolutely. I came in, when I decided that I was going to embark on this step, I made preparations. I then came over in December 2023. I signed a contract pretty quickly, embarked on basic training, and then deployed in early 2024 as a sapper in the Kremnoy, Severodonetsk area, moving around a few times in that area. Sapper work, it includes, laying mines, demining too. So obviously getting rid of Ukrainian mines in civilian areas, wiring explosives. So I did that. I did also general engineer work outside of the bomb squad, which is building things. And then after about 4 or 5 months, I transferred to a storm regiment and took part in storm operations in the general area of the Kharkov region. I was then wounded. This stretches into 2025 at this point. I think I was wounded actually late 2024. And then when I redeployed in early 2025, that was as entrenchment, which is basically manning the front lines. So these positions we hold in case Ukrainians storm our positions. And it's the first line of defense, really. And then, of course, I took part in the evacuation of the wounded and the dead, unfortunately. So that was my last job before I got my vacation, which I'm currently on now, but I soon return again in about a week's time.
Now, have you faced any backlash in the UK or abroad for the fact that now you have participated in the special military operation?
Yeah, sure. So when it first came to the press's attention that I was here, of course, as you well know yourself, what usually happens is you'll get a media surge of absolute diabolical propaganda where they lie about you. You're a drug addict, you're an alcoholic, you're a racist, you're a member of a far-right British nationalist party. I must say this quickly. If I, as an Irish Republican-minded person, was then going to join a far-right British party, it would go against every grain of my being, ideologically wise. And of course, if I was a member of a far-right organization, I would be fighting for Ukraine and not Russia. But that said, yeah, the media went absolutely crazy. It was on mainstream TV, all across mainstream newspapers, all over the internet, all over Europe, all over Asia, because it was quite big, because at the time I was the first Briton over in the official Russian army. This is not counting the militia days. So yeah, it was a steady campaign of Goebbels level propaganda against me. But then as time's gone on and their wishing of death upon me hasn't worked, and I'm being awarded medals. I'm serving multiple deployments in dangerous areas. It's become more sinister. So now what they do is they threaten my family. They try and extort my family. They threaten me. I get death threats every day, death threats, sexual assault threats, which, I try and point out routinely that I'm not gay, but they do this. And I think that's intelligence led, because some of these people that are sending me threats are active servicemen for Ukraine, and they know addresses of family members of mine, where they work. And, this is to put pressure on me to stop me fighting for Russia. But all it does do is it makes me want to pull the trigger even more to eliminate these psychotic people. So, yeah, generally speaking, it's quite tough. And of course, it's not just the press. You've had politicians weighing in, army colonels weighing in, saying I'm a legitimate military target, that I should be tried for terrorism upon return, which is exactly what would happen, by the way, Chris. If I ever return back home, which I cannot, I would be tried for terrorism and war crimes, no doubt, even though I've participated in neither, in my opinion. And that's effectively the way it is. I've chosen my side. And as far as my homeland is concerned, I'm a traitor, a war criminal, and a terrorist. So, yeah, I've not been treated too kindly by the Western media, for sure.
That's for sure. And you've also gotten into some public displays in terms of fighting between yourself and former Ukrainian International Legion and Ukrainian military participants who are from the UK, including Sean and others, Aiden asked, who knows? So tell us about that. Tell us about who are so you are an Irishman born in the UK fighting in the Russian army. We know of others, including our mutual comrade, Ben Stimson, right? Who also was involved in some capacity. We have, others who are involved in different capacities, whether it was in the militia days or in the army, who are British citizens. But tell us about the ones who participated in the Ukrainian side and were with the fascist forces, including Azov. Sean was with Azov. So tell us about that and tell us about your public spats with them.
Well, it's just that, you try and share information online on the Twitter spaces where these two psychopaths usually entertain themselves. And, they've got a loyal following of the Naphoid crowd. We all know who they are. And that's usually, whether it's a mixture of their comrades, or should I say their fellow terrorists in their battalions, or whether it's people in their mum's basements at home that have, no idea what's really going on and haven't got the balls to sign a contract. People kind of follow them. They start mass reporting you, getting you banned. They start threatening you. When you respond, they get your accounts blocked and banned that way. These people are just diabolical. I mean, Aiden Aslin is as thick as concrete. He's not very intelligent at all. And this is the guy that brags about having the skull of a Russian soldier on his mantelpiece, by the way. A truly despicable man. And then you've got Sean Pinner, who's now trying to pass himself off as a journalist, sharing videos of frontline cities which have been decimated by war, knowing that he's being disingenuous and knowing that if that was on the other foot, the city would look just exactly the same. A frontline city is a frontline city, and he's being disingenuous purposefully, and he just spreads nonsense. He's a liar. They're both convicted war criminals. I mean, they were going around the Donbass attacking civilians, whether that be physically or sexually, shooting unarmed surrendered soldiers, and that's what they got convicted for in a court of law and sentenced to death. So, they're in no position to make any judgments on me, but they seem to follow me around, Chris. They're very strange people. They're obviously psychologically deficient. And we also know that Sean Pinner's experiences in Syria, where he stole all the medication which was meant for wounded civilians and wounded soldiers. So that's the level of people you're dealing with here.
Absolutely. And for those who don't know, that Aiden just mentioned, that's something that I reported on in Covert Action Magazine. So check it out. If you haven't, just do a Google search with my name and Covert Action Magazine. Go and check out my 3-part series. 2 of them are out. The 3rd part is still in production. There's a lot of information, a lot of deep investigation being done. But I go in depth about Aiden Aslin, about Sean Pinner, and about John Harding, about these Brits who went to fight in Syria first, did that, stole the tramadol, which I was part of the investigation against them, and helped lead to the end of the medical unit that they were in charge of, because they were basically drug addicts and stole all this medication that was supposed to go to volunteers and to wounded civilians and things. So definitely check that out, because it goes deep. It goes deep. And Aiden and I were talking. They have intelligence ties for sure to MI6, to a lot of the like deep state in the UK, and overall in the Epstein regime world, they're deep part of it. You know, it's a fact.
Yeah, they certainly love that Epstein alliance, don't they, Chris?
They sure do. They sure do. They sure do. Let me ask you. So we have this side. We have the side that's like condemning you. What has the reception been like for you into the Russian army? How have you been treated by Russians? How have you been treated by all of the, you know, sort of nationalities within Russia? How do you feel?
Oh, I was welcomed. I cannot fault being in being a sapper originally. Those groups of people were fantastic. You know, there was no behavior towards me because of my nationality. I think it was more intrigue. They were intrigued while I was here. They couldn't believe that, you know, you had an Irishman or a British person, depending on who you want to speak to and who wants to accept that fact. But yeah, they were surprised, intrigued, and I think they just basically exacerbated that they couldn't comprehend something like that happening. But then, you know, after spending time with me, in knowing that I was down for the cause, you know, I mean, I got on with everybody. And then, of course, moving into the Storm Regiment, motorized rifle regiment, you know, same thing, new group of guys. But again, you know, once you start taking part in combat operations, you know, if there was any skepticism, it soon evaporated. And yeah, I got on with them. In terms of civilians, yeah, I've had a great I say relationship. I've had great meetings with them. Just generally meeting people on the subway. Not that it always comes out that I'm in the SVO, but sometimes, you know, they start speaking to you and it kind of comes out. And, you know, especially amongst the older lot, actually, amongst the sort of Soviet era babushkas and dadushkas, you know, they're very impressed. I'll give you an example, actually, Chris. I was on the subway the other day, and I just got chatting to this woman, and she asked me whilst I was here. And, you know, it's not the sort of thing I volunteer, but we had an in-depth conversation because she spoke English. And then when it became apparent that I was in the SVO and a soldier, you know, she got quite emotional and thanked me for it. And, you know, it's things like that I came here for. It's, you know, it's not money, it's not a computer game, it's not adventure for me, it's ideology. So overall, among civilians especially, I've had a great reception, and I've made some fantastic friends, by the way, you know, so I can't complain at all, really.
I think the feeling is very much mutual on my side as well. Even people just, you know, the fact that you come to Russia at this time when Russia is demonized, we both acknowledge, we know Russophobia is through the roof. In Europe, in the US, Russia's the boogeyman, Russia's the evil empire 2.0. You know, Russia is the source of all evil. It's Mordor for the people who like to use that kind of language. But for us, and even that's why they call us orcs, you know, they call the Russians, you know, not only the soldiers, but even civilians, orcs. You know, for us, they do. But for us, we know that it's the inverse. You know, we know the truth about it. And we know actually that it is Russia that is fighting against the satanic West. And we know this. We're going to get into this. We know this because of, you know, people are shocked in Russia about the Epstein revelations. Shocked. They can't believe it. Like, I remember when those documents came out, people were in like a daze. They were like, is this real? Like, are we in the Twilight Zone? Sort of, you know.
Well, I mean, Chris, I mean, you know, when you see Epstein files that start talking about, you know, child ritual sacrifice and drinking of blood and the murder of children, it's like, you know, because we knew originally that stuff was happening anyway, and then when it starts coming out in black and white in files, and you know, that's the sanitized version. Imagine if it was completely just released without people covering names up, you know what I mean? So, you know, the fact that that's now out there, you know, it has shocked people, but the likes of me and you know that stuff's been going on for a long time. This is literally what we're fighting against. It's another aspect of it. It goes deep. These people are satanic, and with them accusing us of all the things that they're doing, they're inverting things, and that's what Satanists and evil people do, you know.
Absolutely. On that note, let's take a look. Let's take a look at, I put together some documents here, and I want to take a look with all of you. First and foremost, I want to just go back to, on a bigger horizon, I want to talk about, because we're on that topic now. Epstein files mention Zelensky, claim Putin said Zelensky is run by Israelis, right? So we remember that in the documents that were released in January, late January 2026, there was an exchange between former U.S. Treasury Secretary Larry Summers and Jeffrey Epstein dated May 1st, 2019. So we are now in 2019, we're 5 years into the resistance in the Donbass for the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic. And we are about 4 to 5 years out from Crimea's declaration, vote, referendum, declaration of independence, and then incorporation into the Russian Federation, right? So they did that all together there. So we see here that Summers inquired about Ukraine and Epstein responded that Zelensky was seeking help. Epstein further claimed that Zelensky is run by Israelis. So there we have the connection that I think a lot of people have been speaking about, which is the connection between Israel and Ukraine. And by the way, Zelensky himself said that Ukraine is like an Israel 2.0, basically. He said that openly. It's not a secret. So he has here, he goes down, Zelensky looking for help, Putin dismissive, saying he's run by Israelis, wrote Epstein. Zelensky was mentioned 10 times in the Epstein files. Epstein himself visited him multiple times in Ukraine. In emails between Epstein and Aid Rothschild, family member, they discussed Ukraine and they discussed the upheaval in Ukraine. In February 2019, Epstein stayed in Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, a month before Zelensky was elected. Petro Poroshenko, the former president, is mentioned in the Epstein files 26 times. And we have here this exchange, right? So this is Larry Summers and Epstein. Mentally strong is the key to your recovery. Discipline, doing lots of things you don't want to do, taking some time to clear your head. Larry Summers then says, we can discuss Ukraine in all caps. I know a little, having been a number of times to Pinchuk conference and having helped push their debt relief during Yaresko time as foreign minister. And what does Epstein say? Zelensky looking for help. Putin dismissive, saying he's run by Israelis. Can you speak now? Wow. And then you have it even gets more crazy, right? You have down here a whole slew of exchanges. This is between Jeffrey Epstein and Boris Nikolic. And Epstein says, we should go soon to Russia and you should meet my friend Ilya Ponomarev, right? He is a member of Duma, and he and Alyona, his very smart and cute girlfriend, of course he would say that, are the main organizer of the uprising against Putin. He represents Novosibirsk region, but lives in Moscow. I'm afraid what will happen to him, the stakes are huge. He might replace Putin and become president by himself if he does not get killed before. It's super dangerous. Any idea how to help him? Already talking about regime change. So
yes, absolutely.
It's crazy. Ukrainians sought help from Epstein to overthrow Putin. So this is just an example here, right? I just want people to know this is an example of what we're dealing with, the Epstein regime. The Epstein regime wanted regime change in Russia. Tell us, what do you think about this? Like, what do you think about what's going on? Like, against Russia, against Putin, against the government. What does this all mean, you think, in your mind?
Well, for many years, we know when the 1990s, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, we know the West made that happen. They then infiltrated Russia. They took control of their natural resources, whether that was through the means of the intelligence services or through criminal organizations, Jewish oligarchs. They did that. And of course, and they had a decade of a gravy train. And when Putin came to power and put a stop to that gravy train, he was never forgiven for it. And it was clear from that moment forward, he was going to be an enemy. The Russophobia began again. And from that moment, it's always been a case of the West absolutely want regime change, and they've always tried it, whether that be through the Caucasus, whether that be through Georgia, and now Ukraine. These attempted coups, or these financing of terrorism against Russia, is for one reason only, and that is to overthrow the independent and democratically elected government of Vladimir Putin, and they want control of Russia and its resources again. And of course, it goes on a deeper level, because we start talking about people like Jeffrey Epstein and the nefarious crew in Ukraine. Involved in that, you start getting sexual degeneration, satanic behavior. I mean, organizations acting as non-government organizations or humanitarian groups, in actual fact, what they're doing is going around stealing women and children. But it's multifaceted. But yeah, we know that Putin is the number one enemy of the West, and we know their number one goal, and it has been since he came to power, is to replace him. And they won't stop. They will continue to do this, whether it be through idiots like Navalny, which nobody knows who he is here apart from maybe 1 in 20 people. Yet he's put up like he's some kind of Che Guevara, which is offensive, me saying that, to be honest, because we all like Che Guevara. But that's what the West try and do. They're absolute psychopaths, and it's going to continue, unfortunately. So we have to be aware of it.
You're absolutely right. You're spot on there. And actually, that leads us into our next slide that I wanted to take a look at here. So we know that Jeffrey Epstein had, as we know just from the previous article, links in Ukraine. He was recruiting women in Ukraine. This is big. This is big. We didn't know about this, the full extent of this. So do we have this Ukrainian model recruited women for Jeffrey Epstein in exchange for flights, beauty salons, and gifts, right? So we've got this Ukrainian model who was recruiting young women for convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein while receiving benefits from him, right? And the journalist viewed about 1,000 messages from 2015 to 2019 showing that Nastia N, a model from Ukraine, featured in the so-called Epstein files, communicated with Epstein and helped find women for him. They literally turned Ukraine into a giant brothel, basically. It's horrific. On one side, it became a fascist regime that was burning its own people and destroying its heritage and culture and trying to impose something that was totally artificial, right? This territory was always part of Russian Empire, Kiev and Rus, it goes back to the beginning. And they were saying somehow that Ukrainians were sort of parthenogenic. They came out of nowhere. Like they've always been there. It's just not true. But you see what ended up happening, right? So here's Nastia N. They said, of course, the age range 22 to 25. I think it was a little lower. They're trying to cover the tracks here. But she's like, of course, I'll find you some girls. Epstein bought her a new MacBook for $3,500 at her request and paid for her CAD education courses. I mean, it's just sick shit here. At the same time, Nastia wrote to Epstein's assistant that he had promised to help her with her trip in August, buying her round-trip ticket to Kiev and back to New York. So we have these emails. Hey, Jeffrey, how are you? Here are a few pictures of my friend Elena from Russia, 25 years old, who is now in Shanghai and wants to be in the U.S. I met her a while ago and we are friends, but lost contact and recently have reconnected. It's just disturbing. This woman is like literally basically pimping out her friends to Epstein for money. Remind me of 10,000, getting paid 10K to Nastia, transferring that kind of money. I mean, this is diabolical. I mean, we put it correctly tonight. This is satanic, This is
and again, I don't mean to laugh. It's diabolical. It's satanic, and sometimes you have to take a minute to yourself because it's almost unbelievable. But it gets worse. You don't just have Jeffrey Epstein now. You also have Ukrainian politicians, including Zelensky, or more so Zelenskaya through a Children's Foundation, that run the trafficking of children with the connivance of the UK government or rather intelligence services, and they use police officers, convicted sex offenders from the West, acting as volunteers, and they use these humanitarian organizations like White Angels, and who is the other one quickly?
The Phoenix one?
Phoenix. Yes. So they use these humanitarian organizations and they go around snatching children. I mean, there's many videos and articles on this where you have the testimony of parents of these children that are kidnapped under the guise of, oh, they're being evacuated because the Russians are coming, the big bad Russians are coming. But then these children are never seen again. And there is, like I said, the organizations of White Phoenix and Phoenix and White Angels, works directly with Yelena Zelenskaya's foundation. We know she's the wife of Zelensky himself. And then you have Andrei Yermak, who we all know his job within the Ukrainian government and his connivance in snatching his own citizens off the street for the meat grinder. They use SBU agents like Sergei Borisov and police officers like Irina Savchuk, Nina Varich, and Marina Fishchuk. And that even goes to the Rada with characters like Krista Voyich and Leonidovich. And Yuri Vitomsky, who is a senior lieutenant of justice. And, you know, these are the sorts of people, these are the people in Ukraine, at least. These include generals like Alexei Migrin, who's a major general. And then you also have Rustem Lakomsky, who's some kind of baronesque figure that gets involved in underhanded behavior. But all these groups are linked to the Epstein. But then what's even more insidious is the fact that you have an organization called Chemonics that work in tandem with US aid. We all know who they are. They sponsor terrorism and regime changes all over the world, but now child exploitation, sexual exploitation and trafficking. But the people involved in this Chemonics group, Chris, is just diabolical. I mean, you have former PMC members that, you know, fought all around the world as mercenaries in Simon Roughton and Christopher Gibson, and they're also involved in defense companies like Aegis. These are the people that organize these children to then be transported abroad. But overseeing all of this is a Tom Matlock, who is an MI6 agent. So, Chris, even James Bond is involved in this, if you can believe that. And, you know, honestly, and then there's also a woman that deals in the logistics of all of this, and does most of the paperwork and documents, is Kate English. And I think that may be, she's a wife of one of these individuals. I can, my writing's a bit all over the place here, but she's the wife of one of these individuals that I've mentioned. And she is a junior diplomat, you know, of Great Britain to South Asia. So these are the people in Chemonics, and they work with US aid. So those are the names right there. So you've got intelligence services involved, you know, it gets dirtier than that. But on the front of it, those are the organizations and the names involved in snatching children off the street. And then, of course, it stretches into characters like Jeffrey Epstein once they get to America and stuff. But Zelenskaya is complicit with a children's foundation.
For sure. And actually, I found a great article. I'm going to put it up here so we can take a look. So this is from the Foundation to Battle Injustice. Ukrainian child abductors, White Angel and Phoenix, the two programs that Aiden mentioned, are supervised by NATO structures and act on Zelensky's personal orders. So we have these two here. These two groups consist of former and current law enforcement officers of Ukraine who are engaged in kidnapping underage children, and according to sources of the Foundation to Battle Injustice, taking them to Western countries through Ukraine. Now, I just want to say, this is not unheard of, because I've met, and I believe you have as well, Ukrainian POWs. Two of the Ukrainian POWs I met trained in the West. One trained in England, right? One trained in France. And this was just, you know, last year. So clearly there is a connection here because of the Western countries and Ukraine. So when they talk about kidnapping children and taking them to Western countries, I can see it, because these Ukrainian soldiers went through these Western countries to go and do training by the airplane load. right?
Mm.
So,
Well,
go
also,
ahead.
Chris, quickly. Also, Chris, sorry to interrupt, but quickly before you finish that article, the thing is, this is not made up. You have testimony. You have testimony from mothers who don't know where their children are. So, I mean, come on, then, you know, I mean, it's there. The evidence is there. But sorry to interrupt. Carry on the article that you was reading.
Absolutely right. And actually, it is the West that condemns Russia for saving children and bringing them to Russia, not kidnapping them, saving them. Most Ukrainians went to Russia to find safety. Many of them, I think all of them now have gotten Russian citizenship voluntarily. They wanted to, and they've become part of the society here. So I think that this shows the inverse when they talk about Russia and sort of the children, of which they're not, you know, they use all sorts of crazy numbers like we're used to, right? We're used to all these numbers. You know, Iranian government killed 50,000 people, 100,000 people, 30,000 people. Stalin killed 60 million, 40 million, 20. They just made up numbers. But Russia has actually put together the list, has all the kids documented, and has put them in very good situations, much more so than if they were in Ukraine, where clearly in this article, they're kidnapping underage children. And what are they doing with them? Well, we're going to find out here. But it gets pretty scary. So as we keep going down, I mean, just look at this. This is look at all these kids. Look at all these kids in the van. It's sick. It's sick. I feel, you know, I feel so bad because I also have kids. I couldn't imagine them in this situation, you know. So as you mentioned, here are some of the people that you mentioned that are involved with this, with security services, with the kids. So their brigade made 3 or 4 trips a day, each taking a car full of underage children. That is maniacal. Like, what are they doing with these cars full of underage children? You know what I mean?
Well, unfortunately, Chris, like, you know, a lot of the time, I mean, and again, I don't know the exact statistics, but a lot of the time, these kids are simply never heard from again. And with the Epstein files, we kind of know, unfortunately, how some of this is going to end up, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You're spot on. I mean, we might not even see some of these kids or most of them, right? As the activities of the White Angel expand, the Ukrainian government set the task to enlarge and put on the stream the export of underage children. This came from the top. This came from, as you rightfully point out, this came from Zelensky's wife. I mean, this is unbelievable. And look at this. According to a former member of the National Corps of Ukraine, the White Angel was already 2/3 staffed by ideological Ukrainian nationalists due to an influx of willing volunteers who were offered $2,000 for each kidnapped child. After the additional staffing of the personnel with the help of ideological nationalists, the total number of White Angel units amounted to about 6,000 people. Make this make sense, you know? This is sick. This is sick. You know what I mean?
And again, this is another part of the reason. Again, I won't pretend that I knew the complete depravity and depth of what Ukraine were doing. I kind of knew it on a surface level and maybe a few layers deep. But this is the reason why I came to fight, and this is the reason why I've got no qualms about, you know, stopping these people with my Kalashnikov rifle, because these people are absolute psychopaths. I'm proud of what I'm doing to try and stop this. Unfortunately, you know, whilst they still control territories in the Novorossiya regions, and whilst they're still in power, they're going to continue doing this. So all we can keep doing is doing the Lord's work and keep marching forward. But Chris, this is why a lot of us from the West, at least, came over here for ideological reasons and to fight this satanic and barbaric practice, which is going on unabated, you know, in certain areas, whilst the Russians trying to liberate these areas. And that's not even going into organ trafficking and all manner of diabolical practices, you know?
Absolutely. 100%. You're spot on there. I want to continue. This gets really kind of freaky. So it was then that the organization was tasked with creating a positive propaganda image of the organization, and President Zelensky personally blessed White Angels for the mass export of the Ukrainian nation's child gene pool abroad. What is this? You know what I mean? What are they
And Chris,
doing?
Chris, quickly, these children are from the Donbass too, so they are ethnic Russian. So it's not Ukrainian people, Ukrainian children being snatched, although I'd imagine they are too. It's, they're taking advantage of the war and they're snatching ethnic Russian children.
Yes, this is Nazi level type shit. When you talk about like Mengele and all this is sick shit. I'm sorry to say, but this is the truth, everybody. And then we go to Phoenix, right? And we have sort of the people involved with Phoenix and the connections that they have with the White Angels. And here we go, right? According to two Foundation to Battle Injustice in Ukraine sources, in March 2022, Ivan Bakanov, former head of the Security Service of Ukraine, tacitly authorized the Phoenix organization to conduct forced evacuations of children from territories near war zones and gave a direct order to take the toughest possible measures against citizens unwilling to voluntarily surrender their children during so-called evacuation events. That is satanic. Like, to just steal kids.
And a war crime. That's a war crime. Like, totally. Forcibly moving en masse civilians is an actual war crime. But again, the West doesn't want to speak about that,
Of course, and who's going to hold them accountable? You saw that they weren't held accountable for bombing Gaza into the ground and committing a genocide and killing way over probably even 100,000 people. And now they still, it's business as usual, champagne brunch, why rock the boat? And this is the situation that we're in, This is the situation that we're in. It's crazy. To me, it is diabolical, really. We are that we are.
Well, the reason, Chris, these people are not brought to account because these very people that should be bringing these practices to account are the same people that are going to profit off of this behavior. Whether these, when it comes to high level politicians and the leaders of the Western world, because they're the ones they're the types of people that these children end up with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it, and just to think about what they're up to, they began to cooperate with the Ukrainian authorities, requesting detailed lists of names and residential addresses of children from frontline kindergartens and preschools. I mean, if that doesn't reek of like pedophile behavior and just sick, twisted behavior, I don't know what does. I don't know.
Nazi behavior, creating lists, not just and using the apparatus of the state. So in order for them to get lists of names from kindergartens and from schools, that requires the apparatus of the state, i.e. Zelensky. So it is a criminal regime complicit in the child exploitation and trafficking sexually of children and women.
Yep. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm really concerned that there is talk about not only the killing of civilians, right? But even just like organ harvesting and like taking kids who are clearly sick. I mean, and just think about this. I mean, there's this case here. I think she says it. Yeah. Igor was disabled something with his kidneys. It's just, they forcibly took people away. They forcibly took these. It's just, I don't know. It is crazy. And then look at these guys. This is sick. This is sick stuff, They're all connected. They're all involved. So, you have thousands of kids missing due to these organizations, these criminal organizations like White Angel and Phoenix that claim to be human rights defenders, when in reality, they continue to immiserate the people of Ukraine, including these poor kids, even some of them from the Donbass that they're just stealing. And who knows what's going on? We heard organ harvesting. We heard sexual abuse, ritual abuse. I mean, it's sick. It's ultimately very, very sick. And I think that it's going to cause problems. It's ultimately going to cause problems for people,
And this is Sorry, Chris, you continue.
No, go ahead, please.
And this is why it's absolute paramount to liberate, at the very least, the territories of the Novorossiya regions. But then, in my opinion, I don't think that's enough, because if you do that and even come to some kind of peace agreement, you are still going to have the same regime, the same people, with the connivance, with the support of the Western intelligence services. These people need removing, just like Adolf Hitler needed removing from Berlin after World War II. So, in my opinion, it literally is a case of Ukraine needs to be denazified, but then it also needs to be de-Westernized, because we know the Epstein alliance the fingerprints are all over Ukraine. Not just the fingerprints, you've got the foundations of the Epstein alliance all over Ukraine, and unfortunately it's not going to stop. So, when I go back to Ukraine, as tough as war is, and as tough as being on the front line is, these are the reasons that I'm going to use. So whenever I feel like I'm having a bad day or having a bad experience, ain't nothing in comparison to kids getting snatched, and mothers never seeing their children again, and people being kidnapped and killed and trafficked with the connivance, as I said, of the British and American states and all over Europe. And so, it's I'm going to be loading up on my magazines, on my armor, and I'm going to be going forwards. And there's going to be no quarter given from me for these demonic people or anyone allowing these people to get away with it. Hence, Russians, Ukrainian soldiers on the front line, they are my enemy, and they will be stopped, because this satanic practice needs to be eliminated.
Oh, you're absolutely right. You are spot on. And on that, I want to go to our last screen I wanted to share tonight, which is from Anna Kuznetsova, who's who presented this report to the Duma, the State Duma of the Russian Federation. And this is the final report of the Parliamentary Commission on Investigation of the Crimes Committed by the Kiev regime against minors. And here's a picture of her speaking. We see a lot of the great leaders of the Duma in the back there. I think that's Babakov, and a whole crew of people here. And I want to go down. She gives up first about murder and wounding and mutilation of children. She then talks about kidnapping. She talks about black transplantology. There had been recorded facts of illegal transplantations and medical experiments on children in hospitals in Lysychansk and Mariupol, as well as in Rubezhnoye and Severodonetsk. There were mobile groups of bioengineers and mobile operating rooms assisted by Western private military companies. I mean, this is nuts. They're doing all sorts of experimentations. And by the way, this cannot come as a surprise, because this was revealed in the Epstein papers that Epstein himself was interested in this kind of stuff. This is not fake. This is corroborated by the Epstein files, which came at different times to this.
Yeah, and as I said, Chris, you imagine the unsanitized version of the Epstein files, which it's 10 times, 100 times worse than what it is.
Absolutely, no doubt about it at all in my mind, and that. And look at this. Fourth group is related to crimes against sexual inviolability. There are torture chambers. These are smoking plants in one of the cities of Lugansk. Militants raped children there. It was revealed that the director of the local lyceum took the children there to the militants. In Ukraine, children are being sold abroad where they fall into the hands of pedophiles. I mean, sexual slavery. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I can give you a real life example that I personally seen. So when I was deployed near Severodonetsk, I had to visit the hospital one time because I'd rolled over on my ankle. Nothing major, but of course they want to make sure that you get checked and that you're fit for service. And we went past the ruins. There's most of Severodonetsk is ruins, but near a particular hospital, there was like a building of ruins, and one of the commanders there showed me around the place, and literally it was I don't know what the building was originally. It was near the main hospital in Severodonetsk, and there were rooms in there which were kitted out for torture. And of course, we know who they belong to. So yeah, I personally seen a few of these rooms near the Severodonetsk region, and that's exactly what they were. They were torture rooms. Now, the level of torture, I don't know. It felt eerie, and I didn't really want to be in there. At the time, I was a soldier, so I try and put it into the back of my mind and continue my tasks. But yeah, I remember seeing that building, and it was it wasn't very nice. Some bad things have obviously happened there. So yeah, these people are all over the place doing it.
Absolutely, and actually, when you're looking at this stuff, you have to really take it in that the Ukrainian regime has no regard for morals, ethics, nothing. They are the most brutal and barbaric. And we know about this because when I was in Donetsk and Lugansk, and you go to the alleyways of the kids, and all these the monuments of kids who died, it is horrific. And they were purposefully targeted, not by accident. This is purposefully targeting kids, even with those cluster munitions. You remember the butterfly petals that are mines?
I was literally just about to say that. Yeah, and yeah, looking like toys, so children would pick them up in their play parks and then get limbs blown off. Unbelievable.
That's sick. Like, to purposely make things that look like toys, knowing that kids will pick them up. It's just abuse after abuse after abuse. Not only are kids stolen from their families, not only are kids raped, tortured, abused, done horrific things to, they're also the targets of wanton and purposeful use of munitions to conceal that it's a munition, and in fact, a toy for the kids, and then to mutilate these kids who did nothing wrong. It's just.
I mean, I don't know how much time we have left, Chris, but I can also tell you some stories about when I was on evacuation and about, Ukrainians targeting the evacuation squads, which most of the time were carrying out the wounded and at times carrying out civilians. And, there's videos that I've personally seen from our drone squads that obviously they were so outrageous that, of course, they were being shown to people in our regiment. And they were videos of whilst the liberation of Kupiansk was happening when I was there at the time. And you had Russians usually go in as they're liberating and drop in leaflets explaining with civilians and residents who live there that if they want to make it to the Russian lines, to wear white armbands and to walk down certain routes. And then there was multiple videos of old women, men, older men and women, making their way to the Russian lines with the white armbands on, and then out of nowhere, and they're being monitored by drones to make sure they're safe and to make sure they get to the Russian lines, and they're guided. And then out of nowhere, you get Ukrainian kamikaze drones coming in, killing them. And I'm aware of this. I've seen this. So that's another aspect of what they do, because once Russia liberate an area, a city or a township, any resident that refuses to evacuate with the Ukrainians, that if they're not killed or forcibly dragged out, by making their way to the Russian lines, they're seen as traitors, seen as fair game. They're unarmed. They're usually old people, vulnerable people. And the Ukrainians were sending kamikaze drones to kill them.
It's horrible. Like they are purposely targeting civilians of violation, not only a war crime, a violation of laws of armed conflict, everything moral and ethical that we learned in the military as professional soldiers. It goes against everything. But look at what they're doing. They're actually promoting it. It becomes state policy.
And is that inversion that you talk about? Because when these things happen, like Bucha, for example, when we know it was a similar experience where, these civilians are going to make their way to the Russian lines. And of course, they're seen as collaborators. So what happened? You had the extremists move in, the banderists, and wiped them all out and blamed Russia for it. So when these people in Kupiansk were killed, I seen these videos before they were even released to the media. And then, I seen them. They're from our drones, watching Ukrainian drones come in and kill them. But as soon as those were released to the media, Ukraine is straight on their propaganda machine. Oh, look what Russia just did. And it's the inversion. It's a perversion and inversion,
Absolutely. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, How has
Sure.
war changed in your mind? And how do you see the use of drones now having changed the battlefield?
Absolutely a diabolical invention, but we know that it was the Ukrainians who started using them first, with the connivance and the support of the West, as usual. But of course, once one side starts doing it, the other side has to adapt and, have either a symmetrical or a symmetrical response. So it's drone warfare, and it's so bad that a lot of the time, if you've got opposing sides in one direction, where you've got Ukrainians on one side and the Russians on the other side, and there's literally a few kilometers in between, it almost makes it impassable, because drones will just park there, waiting for soldiers to strike. Even they do it for evacuation squads, which I was a part of, to take out the wounded and the people that the brave people that are no longer here, and even delivering food products and stuff like that. So yeah, drones can stop whole companies and regiments in their tracks. They're very dangerous. So you really have to watch out for them, because they can come out of nowhere. And if you're caught on open ground, because you imagine, if you're not fighting, even you can get caught out. Sorry, you can get caught out in an urban area, but if you're in the forest belts, in the fields, there's going to be routes, even behind your own lines. There's going to be routes where you might get 1, 2, 3 kilometers of no cover at all, and of course you've got to supply the guys at the front line with weapons, munitions, and drones can disrupt that. I thankfully, from my own experience, when I first went to Kupiansk, deployed in the entrenchment, that's when drones really became a problem. And I would say for the first couple of months, Ukraine had supremacy, but then quickly after that, Russia regained supremacy and then some, and that then allowed them to push into the Kupiansk city proper. But just those experience of dealing with drones and even coming out for a toilet, you could get whacked. They're a diabolical invention, but unfortunately, it seems that Ukraine used them for very nefarious reasons. And they like targeting the evacuation squads or the caravan squad, the one that carry the products. And a lot of the times, these people can be unarmed, not because they don't have weapons, but because they need to make these routes as quickly as possible, and they don't need the extra weight. A brave job, to be fair, but yeah, very dangerous, very scary, and they do a lot of damage, and that's on both sides.
For sure, and I'm sure that you have so many experiences that you could share, and if we had more time, which we will, going to have you back on the show for sure. But I can share in a future interview, Chris. I've got no problem being a bit more sort of direct, and I can tell you about some of the experiences I've had when I've nearly been killed, or with being chased by drones, etc. So yeah, that's no problem. We can do that on another episode. For sure, we will. And I wanna, of course, on behalf of everybody, we got a lot of love in the chat. I don't know if you can see it. A lot of love. A lot of people
I can, but I'll read it afterwards.
Are really into you and proud of you. And I want to thank you for all the hard work that you've done. You've sacrificed a lot, and you've proven yourself on the battlefield. And it was really wonderful, not only to meet you in person, but to have you on the show. Look forward to our future collaboration. Look forward to all the good things to come. And I want you to be safe. I want you to be well. If you have any last words for our viewers and listeners, please, the floor is yours.
I will just say that, it's just, the people that already support us, it's welcomed. It's the support that drives us on. So the people that already support us, we thank you. We love you for it. But to the people that may be undecided, or for the people that may be not on our side, just read these documents, read these articles, and listen to me. I see these types of things happening. I'm not making it up just for an interview's sake. There's plenty of testimony. So just open your eyes. You know what your own governments are capable of. If you want to go back to the Iraq War or the Afghanistan War, if you're in America, go back to the Vietnam War and the lies that was based on, or Desert Storm and the Twin Towers, and trying to link Saddam Hussein to Al Qaeda when Al Qaeda was actually made by the CIA to fight Russians. It was Al Qaeda is not even a real word. It's a name file that the CIA had for the Mujahideen in Afghanistan that fought the Soviets. So just open your eyes. You know what your own country is capable of. Look at Epstein. Look at the politicians involved that are not being prosecuted. Look at the politicians that create crimes. So you really need to open your eyes. But again, for the people that support us, we appreciate it. We carry you in our hearts, or else we go to battle for you. So that's what I would say, Chris.
Absolutely, Aiden. Thank you. Beautiful words. Beautiful words. A lot of love in the chat. Thank you again. Look forward to seeing you very soon. Take care of yourself and have a wonderful night. Thanks again for joining us here. Great interview.
Thank you for having me on, Chris.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So we are now coming to the end of our stream. I want to thank all of you for tuning in, for staying with us. There's a lot of great articles that we went through. Please look for them, check them out. And if you haven't already, like, share, comment, subscribe on our DD Geopolitics YouTube channel, on my YouTube channel, Christopher Halali Official. Go over there, follow us on X, follow us on Instagram, follow us everywhere that you can, and continue to spread the word, because these are important stories. This is important history that needs to get out. And, I want to thank you all again for joining us. It was a great stream. We had almost 5,000 people live today. Thanks again for all the good work that you all are doing as well. And I want to thank, of course, we had a super chat today from, let's see here, from Gordon. We have, from Gordon Osterhage for 1466. Super sticker, $10. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the love and support. We appreciate it. Thank you all again. We're going to have some upcoming streams. There's a lot of good things that are going to come in the next few weeks. Not only the stuff in China, but as everybody can see, there's a lot of stuff happening around the world. We're going to continue moving on. My ankle is better for those who don't know. So stay tuned. Keep in touch. Appreciate you all. Stay safe. Stay well. Keep your minds open and sharp. And we'll see you all again very soon.